Hi, this is Ricki Spencer and welcome to another episode of Quest by Community, Our Health Matters. And today we're deep diving into something that I'm quite passionate about, although I don't talk much about it, and that's football. Yes, football. What is football? Why are we talking about football today? And what is happening in the world of something called GayFL? We're going to find out with two wonderful guests who are about to immerse the Australian community with the first ever podcast, tapping into all those questions we've always wanted to ask. We've got Chris and Brendan. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us, Ricki. It's such a pleasure.
So Chris and Brendan, tell me a little bit about GayFL.
GayFL came about because we have always been passionate about AFL. The term GayFL is actually a slur that was used in the past by other sports for the events not being tough enough. And so we decided to reclaim that. And as we talked about football, we found that our straight people wouldn't want to engage with us about the game. They wouldn't take us seriously. And our queer friends were like, oh, I don't sport. And they just didn't want to engage about it either. And we basically went, surely there are people like us from the queer community that like footy, and we wanted to create a space for those people and for that community.
Brendan, tell me a bit about your journey. What got you to fall in love with football?
I grew up in a footy family. My dad played footy, my older brothers played footy. I was pushed into playing footy. I wasn't particularly good at it, but I loved it from a really early age, and I have some very keen memories of going to the MCG, and my nan used to live in Whitten Oval, so we'd go there after seeing my nan. And there are such great memories, and I was a lifelong Essendon supporter. I mean, I was in the cheer squad growing up. It wasn't like Bring It On or anything. I wasn't jumping around doing flips or anything, but I was waving a flag and yelling about something I cared about. So I was actually doing that until I was about 17, and GayFL was really important, and it was something that we'd been thinking about for quite some time, because I didn't think there was a place in the world for footy and being queer to, it's such a juxtaposition. And it's almost like Shakespearean. Like, I always found it, I love footy so much, but I don't know if footy likes me and if I actually belong. And Chris and I started talking about footy about 6 years ago, and it's like, oh my God, somebody's passionate about footy, and somebody gets the frustration and the joy and the depression of supporting something, but not knowing if you have, if you fit into that world.
For our listeners to get to know you both. And you told me a wonderful story about the both of you going to a football match, and this is your time to disclose that you were once a
Richmond fan.
Yeah, and
Very
you went to a game together. Tell me a bit about that. What happened at this game?
Growing up watching football, I grew up in South Australia. Adelaide wasn't in the AFL, so I followed Richmond. And I followed Richmond for a really long time. And when we started going to games together, he actually won me an Essendon membership. And so I started going to Essendon. I had my Richmond membership, my Essendon membership. And we would go to both. And then we started getting around the training, getting around the players, getting to know the club. And my enthusiasm for the Bombers actually grew. And a few years ago, we were at Dreamtime, which is a huge game for the Indigenous community in particular. But between Richmond and Essendon, I was in my Richmond gear. He was in his Essendon gear. And it came down to about the last 60 seconds where Essendon were trailing and scored a goal and won by a few points. And in my full Richmond gear among the Tiger faithful, I was cheering for the Bombers. And I realized that my heart had made the decision for me, and ended up dropping my Richmond membership. I still have a soft spot for the Tigers, but I've definitely jumped ship, which is a huge controversial thing in Melbourne to change teams late in life. But the Bombers chose me.
And what's it like in your households? Like when the football season is on and Essendon is playing, does that mean all the phones go on silent and that's it?
Footy in our household, it's myself, it's Chris, it's my little brother, my housemate. Hey, Adam. He's also an Essendon supporter, and we get so into it, Ricki. It's not even funny, especially leading up to grand final. We decorate the house, we have streamers, we have footy stuck up everywhere. It's so electric. It's almost kind of like a second Christmas.
When I grew up in the 80s, and I did have a passion for football, and I followed Richmond for a long time, and also I think a bit of Western Bulldogs. But it was something I had to almost hide because as then presenting as a gay male, I didn't fit as though I belonged. Why do you think in the LGBTIQ community there is still sometimes this reluctance or fear of embracing AFL football?
I think a lot of it comes down to, not that I'm qualified in this area, but to the fear of rejection. There's that fear that either the very heteronormative cis straight male community will reject you for being different. And there's also, I think, a bit of fear that our allies or queer community members will reject us for liking something that is so heteronormative. And I think there's a large portion of the community that, unfortunately, whether it's from playing, participating, watching, that they self-exclude. Whether they're either actively rejected from the game, because they're you know, it can be, there's a level of toxicity, particularly going back to the 80s and 90s, and it remains today, to be honest. But I think sometimes there's that self-exclusion where people go, I don't feel safe, I don't feel included, I don't feel that. Even if you look at the media, the football media is not aimed at people who aren't cis, white, straight males the majority of the time. And the game and the fan base is so much bigger than that.
The changes you've seen since women have established. Can you tell us a little bit about your kind of take on that?
When it comes to the AFLW, the things they do, I mean, they're breaking that glass ceiling. They're not just going above that, they're going above and beyond, and they're smashing it. They do so much. It's such an inclusive environment, the AFLW. There's so many times we go to the AFLW games and everyone from every different walk of life. I mean, obviously you've got the queer community, you've got people living with disabilities. It's amazing seeing the young Indigenous community as well attending the AFLW games. There's so much inclusion. And then, of course, like we've just had Pride rounds. There's so much discourse about Pride game. And I mean, the AFLW does 2 rounds where all the teams get together, and the result of the games doesn't, I would like Essendon to win, to be quite honest, but the result of the games, the end is more important. The actual community is more important than whoever wins that particular game.
Chris, can you tell our audience, to those that may not know, what is the Pride Round and why do you both think it's an important aspect to the whole AFL season?
There are so many milestone rounds that are important in the AFL and the AFLW that, you know, for communities that need to be celebrated or that deserve to be celebrated rather than need, you know, and it was identified by the AFLW that they wanted to celebrate the queer community, and that this did grow this year into being 2 specific rounds. Now, the clubs wear Guernseys, rainbow Guernseys, specially designed. I'm actually wearing the Essendon AFLW rainbow socks.
Wow, I love them.
That I was gifted by the club, and you know, it gets bigger every year. So there are drag kings and drag queens. There was a Pride March at Whitton Oval this year. There were activations at Icon Park for the Carlton game. You know, Mitch Brown came out and spoke at that one, you know, and it's a moment for the community to celebrate unity and participation and, you know, the mutual love of the game. And Izzy Grant from the Bulldogs actually said to us that, you know, the queer community built the AFLW because there is a large number of people involved in the AFLW from the queer community and the gender diverse community as well. And, you know, they had that fortunate moment where they all got to come out at once. And so, and the men's is obviously trailing behind in that area. There is a Pride game that the men's do this year. It was between Sydney and Essendon. In the past, it's been with St Kilda as well, but the W doesn't just walk the walk. They don't just talk the talk, they absolutely walk the walk with it as well. But even outside of the actual specific Pride rounds, it's such a safe, inclusive environment where you can wear your rainbow. If you are gender diverse and don't feel safe at the men's games, you can go to the women's games and be celebrated. We see couples holding hands and, you know, 6-year-olds waving Pride flags. It's a really beautiful moment to experience.
Brendan, you were mentioning before about, you know, how safe it is for people who are trans and gender diverse to really embrace and come to a space where you can be yourself.
Absolutely.
And be absorbed. What are some of the things that, say, someone who's just recently affirmed themselves and then maybe it's their first public event going to a match, what could they expect?
To me, the sense of community is just amazing. It really is just a celebration. A lot of the times when we go to the AFLW, we lose track of the game because we're so focused on talking to some of our friends. And I guess what they would expect is just a fun time where they can come in, they can dress however they want, however they feel comfortable. It's pretty much come as you are in an AFLW game. And that's one of my favorite things about it.
What about older people? Like I'm now at this age where, and I'm heavily involved in, supporting older people to engage. What benefits can you both see or you can mention to our audience who say over 55, perhaps grew up with football maybe negatively, felt excluded? What would you like to both say to our listeners there?
I think the biggest thing for me is that, football is our national game. And it needs to represent and be available to the entire nation. And football is the great leveler. So it doesn't matter your age, your gender, your race, your ability. None of those things matter if you're passionate about the game and you enjoy the game. And participation can come in so many forms. It could be going to a game, it could be playing the game, it could be sharing a little bit of water cooler conversation in the office or, with someone at a cafe. And I find the connection that it brings. There are so many people that I've met, whether it's the CEO of my company or someone that I've run into at the club that I would have no opportunity to talk to and meet outside of my day-to-day life. And you bring up football and you suddenly find something in common. And at the end of the day, being human is about finding connection, about finding what's in common with each other. And there's so many things that are being pushed down everyone's throat at the moment of our differences. And, particularly in the political space, but, football, the differences are celebrated in the sense of you can be fierce rivals, but still be having a drink and talking about the game, win, lose or draw.
With the social media now limited to people under the age of 16 and the impact this may have on our young people who are questioning their gender and affirming their sexuality and gender. And your podcast is a way to kind of unite people. Why is a podcast important in 2025 within our community and sport?
Again, that connection that I was just talking about, because, if one of my friends is pretty much housebound and part of their connection is their phone and is their computer and is that social media. And then when you go to younger people, they've grown up in a generation where everything that they know exists in this device on the palm of their hand. It gives them the opportunity to ask questions and engage in content or reach out to people or connect with people that maybe don't exist in their school or in their family or in their community. And it gives them a safe space where they can put their headphones in and tune in and hear people that sound a bit like who they think they might be or who they are, and see themselves reflected in media, in sport, in the world, existing as a safe, valid person. When we sometimes forget, even in 2025 for young people, sometimes the school or the home environment is not as safe. And whether it's reaching out through their phone or listening to the radio or seeing someone on TV, when we grew up, we didn't get to see people like us on the TV very much. And, so to have, this space where young people can go, that's what I want to be, or that's who I'm aiming to be, or that's someone like me.
What I like about your podcast, GayFL, is that I can envisage young people in schools who falling in love with football and then thinking, I want to be, I can be a footballer, professional footballer, and it's okay to be part of the LGBTIQ community openly and play football. Is that one of your hopes too for your podcast?
If our content gives someone the opportunity to engage and to be part of, the football community is such a great community. And if it gives them the opportunity to have someone to look to, or to, someone to go, I want to be that. Because it was said to us recently, you can't be what you can't see. And so, when young kids are watching, whether it's particularly within the female space, now young girls can grow up watching football and go, I can dream of being an AFLW player. And, young people can also look, particularly in the AFLW space, and go, that person is non-binary, that person is queer, that person is a lesbian, that person is gender diverse. And they can see these people thriving. And there's so much talk in the world about how hard it is for our community, but we sometimes forget the queer joy, and that queer people can thrive when they're supported by queer people.
You mentioned earlier on there are pride, in every club. Can you tell us a little bit about what does that mean? Does every club have an LGBTIQ space?
Yeah.
And how can people who are listening get involved?
I don't think it is every club. I think there's maybe 2 or 3 that are missing. But if you look up any of the clubs on social media, on the Instagram or Twitter or anything like that, most of them do have active members that do a lot of participation. And they're really great. They get together, they do social events, they organise them. We've been very fortunate with Purple Bombers to have a great relationship with them, where we've done Guard of Honours and we've welcomed the AFLW and the AFL team onto the ground, which is an insane experience. We did a coin toss recently and presented the ball. So I would recommend anyone who is, you are looking for something to support, have a look, just look on the socials, even reach out to us. There's so many different avenues there. So it's one thing that really struck me, Ricki, as well, just before we created GayFL, was I think it's the collective queer community. We can all feel a little bit alone sometimes, and that's a horrible feeling. And that was sort of why we created what we created. We love footy. We love, for all the silly reasons, we love watching them. And we love watching a bunch of men chase each other around in short shorts. Let's not lie. But we love the strategy. We love the athleticism. We love the competition. We love the on and off field banter. And it's something that just brings people together. And I was surprised before I created GayFL. I knew AFL had quite a queer following, but we've had quite a few people reach out to us from our community who have told us, we didn't think, we were welcome at the football. We didn't think we could show up. So that's been a really good experience as well.
I think we've whet everyone's appetite from GayFL. What are some of the things that people can expect to hear from your lustrous podcast?
We do have about 2 years of content up, and it is moving on to the radio. If you're listening to our show, we would like you to feel that we are 2 guys sitting down at the pub talking smack about the football, and you're part of that conversation. You're involved in that conversation, whether that's as someone who's listening or whether you're engaging on social media. Now, we want to cover the news, we want to cover the current events, we want to cover the games, but we also try to take a light-hearted approach. We have a segment called Unintentionally Homoerotic Commentary, where we make fun of the things that are said in the media, as a genuine about a contest. But if you listen to it with the mindset of a 10-year-old boy, it's pretty funny. We also we have a segment called Stars Around, where we look at all the crazy things that social media, the clubs are doing, or off-field. We also want to make sure that we do cover the things that are really important to our community. So about inclusion, about removing homophobia and transphobia and misogyny and violence against women. There's a lot of, we will get political at times, but we also try to keep it a bit light and fun as well.
We certainly like to add a little bit of our own brand of sass.
So many topical issues, and obviously the one that I've had a few people reach out to me to ask you both, what is your opinion about trans sports people in AFL? Do you think that more needs to be done?
I think the need to be more inclusive for the gender diverse community is a massive understatement. I don't think we can say loudly enough how much that needs to be brought to the forefront. We are, fortunate in the AFLW there are out non-binary players that, and they, Tilly, for example, from Hawthorn recently did an interesting piece about their top surgery and what that was like for them. And while I certainly don't have the lived experience to speak for the trans or gender diverse community, what I know is that the right to participate in sport, whether it's on field or off field, is a protected human right. And that applies to all humans, regardless of age, race, sexuality, or gender. And so, quite frankly, it shouldn't even be a debate to me. Should trans people be represented and included in AFL? The question for me is, why aren't they? That's kind of where I come from that perspective.
Just want to get both your opinions on this. We heard people debating about Tasmania having their own club.
The national game. And when I say that it needs to represent the whole nation, I mean it needs to represent the whole nation, and that includes Tasmania. There is a huge footy community down there, and there are some absolute stars that have come from Tasmania, like Jack Reebok was from Tasmania, wasn't he? And they don't get to represent their state. And the young players we talked about, you can't be what you can't see. If you live in Tasmania and you play AFL in the local leagues or in school, if you know that if you want to have a career, you have to move to the mainland. And at the end of the day, if there has been such a push and such a vibe for a Tasmanian team, I am here for it. I love it. When they started their membership, they got thousands and thousands and thousands of foundation members who can't go to games. They just joined because they wanted to be part of it. The appetite is there.
Recently, I heard there's going to be an extra game. What's your view on this?
I'm a pretty traditional when it comes to footy. I don't know if I'm happy with, I think at the end of the day, when it comes to the finals, especially the grand final, you've got the two best teams duking it out. The possibility that a bottom tier team may just slip in because of that extra game, I'm a little bit undecided, to be quite honest.
I'm open to trying it. I'm reserving judgment until the end of next season. I'm a little bit nervous because one thing that makes me think about, if you, in the current format and in that format as well, if you're a top 4 team, you play the first week of the finals, you get a week off, play the first week, play the third week, play the grand final. That's 3 games. If you're an 7 to 10 team, you might have to play 5 games to get that grand final. So how matched is the fitness and the game time going to be for a team playing 5 weeks in a row versus a team that's played 3 times in 5 weeks? It makes me. I think in a bid to even the playing field, they've actually potentially made it less even.
One of those questions I was also asked to ask you both. The costs that a lot of people are telling me that it's very hard, like the cost to go into or membership.
I agree 100%. It's very expensive. I don't know how families do it, let alone people that go by themselves. The cost of the membership does. I'm a proud member, but the membership does constantly increase. And even if you're paying for that membership that is hundreds of dollars, actually getting to the game and getting food and getting whatever, it's so pricey. It's really insane. I think that was a huge appeal as well, not only just to support the AFLW and the women's side, it is a lot more accessible. It's nowhere near as expensive to actually go to an AFLW game.
That's very true. And it's another reason I love the AFLW. The same as you were just saying, Brendan, actually. Not only is an average ticket to the men's, you're probably looking about $70 for an adult non-concession. And obviously if you have 2 adults and kids and, or larger families, that can be a lot. And then by the time you get beers or pies or, soft drink at the footy. But the AFLW at the moment, I think is about $15 a ticket for a non-concession holder. And children get in free to most games. And it means that families have the opportunity, and people who maybe can't afford the membership or can't afford to get the really good seats for a men's game have the opportunity to participate, which is what we keep coming back to, that right to participate and to be included. Because some of my fondest memories from when I was a little kid was my grandma and my mum and my brother and my cousins and I would go to the SANFL, and we would run around and cheer on, even though we had no idea what was going on the ground. And it was just, it's like in Inside Out, those sort of core yellow bubble memories that I have from being a little kid. And I'd hate to think that this generation coming through of young people are not going to get those opportunities only because they can't afford it. That's not good enough.
No, absolutely.
What message to the listeners out there why they should consider taking time to listen to your podcast?
We just really wanted to create a sense of unity and camaraderie and get together with our community. There's so many different podcasts that you can listen to, great ones, amazing ones, but GayFL was super important to us because I was actually looking for a queer podcast talking about footy quite a few years ago, and there just wasn't one. We're the first that I know of. So I think people listening to us, they can get a sense of fun, a sense of inclusion. Well, as Chris mentioned, we talk about current events and news, and we always joke that I'm kind of the goss and the scandals, and Chris is more the facts and the figures and the stats. He reads the rule book, he knows what he's talking about. I'd like to think people listening to us, they can have a bit of a laugh and feel included and not feel like that they belong. There is a place for them. And the queer community, there is a large queer following in the AFL, whether the AFL wants to admit it or not. And I just want them to feel included. I just want everyone to feel included.
If you want to know what's going on from our community's perspective, if you want to hear about the queer issues, if you want to hear about the queer hot takes, if you want to hear about who we're thirsting over this week, maybe this is for you. But I think the main thing that we want to say to people is, if you have listened to the mainstream media and you go, I don't feel like this is for me, give us a go, because we are trying to create content that is for you, for specifically those people who feel like what's going on in the media is not for them.
Chris and Brendan, Maher, it's been absolutely fabulous having you both. I'm a fan and I'm biased. I think it's so much needed. It's the right time. Proud to be queer and GayFL, and I can't wait to see everyone wearing those shirts. It's been wonderful, and we were so looking forward to seeing that podcast and hearing more from them and their journey, really changing the Australian football landscape, making it inclusive for every single person living in this country. It's Ricki Spencer signing off for Our Health Matters, Quest by Community.